Just like radical Democrats here in the States, foreign politicians who once laughed at and mocked Donald Trump are now crying actual tears at his return. So this past weekend, J.D. Vance gave a speech in Munich and all of Europe freaked out. But I would specifically like to talk about German diplomat Christopher Häsken, who in 2018 laughed alongside all his other German diplomats when Donald Trump was trying to warn them about the dangers of Germany relying on Russia for energy.
We are not going to put up with it, these horrible prices, much longer. Reliance on a single foreign supplier can leave a nation vulnerable to extortion and intimidation. That is why we congratulate European states such as Poland for leading the construction of a Baltic pipeline so that nations are not dependent on Russia to meet their energy needs. Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers. It has been the formal policy of our country since President Monroe that we reject the interference of foreign nations in this hemisphere and in our own affairs.
Yeah, the German diplomats laughed at the time, but Trump's comments really seem prescient in retrospect. You see, Germany got most of its energy from Russia, but ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, Germany has been searching for alternative sources of energy. But that sort of disentanglement from Russia doesn't happen overnight. If only they had been warned. Like, I don't know, via Trump's speech in 2018. According to The Economist, Russia has long been Germany's biggest supplier of energy, accounting for over 60% of the energy they consume. But it's not just The Economist. According to Brookings, Germany was by far Russia's largest gas customer by volume, importing nearly twice the volume of Italy, their next largest customer. So this past weekend, J.D. Vance didn't go there to tout his horn. He didn't go there to laugh at the Germans. In fact, he went, similar to Trump in 2018, with a warning all of Europe, hey, your values are under attack, and they're under attack from within, and you guys need to get on the same page, because we're supposed to be allies. We're supposed to be on the side of freedom, free speech, and have these shared ideals. It was a warning. But it was supposed to be more than that. It was supposed to be about accountability and encouraging Europe to hold itself to a higher standard. But that's not how the European politicians took it. In fact, German diplomat Christopher Häsken, who laughed at Trump a few years earlier, broke down in tears immediately after J.D. Vance's speech.
This conference started as a transatlantic conference. After the speech of Vice President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. I'm very grateful to all those European politicians that spoke out and reaffirmed the values and principles that they are defending. No one did this better than President Zelensky. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
Now, I don't know about you, but to me it appeared as if he cut his speech short. I don't think "let me conclude" was supposed to be his last line. I think he was, as you could see, he was starting to break down, and I think he was on the verge of having a true meltdown and a true breakdown on stage. So I think he began the last segment of the speech and realized, hey, I can't do this. And so from what it appears to me, he just cut it short. Now, what was in J.D. Vance's speech that has Europe up in arms? Well, his entire speech was about encouraging them to do better when it comes to free speech. So yesterday, 60 Minutes CBS, man, they just hit a new low. In fact, yesterday, I made a video in response to Margaret Brennan claiming that free speech is to blame for the Holocaust. Yeah, seriously, try to wrap your mind around that. But it wasn't just that statement. 60 Minutes had an entire segment about German policing, and it seemed to me like they were trying to prop up German policing as a role model for the entire world. And they had German officers on the air explaining how they arrest people for posting insults and memes online. And CBS appeared to be defending that. According to Newsweek, Americans shocked by 60 Minutes' report on German speech policing. The CBS News piece showcased how German authorities cracked down on online speech deemed harmful or offensive under the country's stringent speech laws. The report documented early morning police raids targeting individuals suspected of posting content that could incite hatred, including insults and even memes. And the Daily Wire confirms German prosecutors tell 60 Minutes that an insult is a crime. And that's exactly what J.D. Vance's speech was about. Similar to Trump's speech in 2018, it was a warning and a wake-up call to Europe, saying that, hey, there is this threat in front of you. It is a threat to your security, your way of life, and you guys need to wake up and do something about it. Here's just a clip of the speech.
We gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally, we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them.
Now, before I show you the rest where he actually talks about free speech and gives examples of how Europe has been taking many steps backwards, jumps backwards, light years backwards when it comes to speech, he has a great point. And I think every American should be proud of the speech that J.D. Vance gave over in Europe. Because Ronald Reagan popularized the idea of America being that shining city on a hill. And to me, that's more than just being a leader or a role model for other countries to follow, but I think it's actually walking the walk and holding other countries accountable. It's been so long since we've had a leader who has very clear convictions. And it's not just Trump, it's the entire administration. And yes, that includes J.D. Vance. And I think it's a great thing. I think it should make us all feel proud and patriotic that we're trying to hold our European allies accountable and saying, hey, we're supposed to have these shared values. What the heck are you guys doing? Wake up here. And I think that's fair. Like, why should we be sending our hard-earned tax dollars overseas when not only do we have our problems here in our own backyard, but when the supposed allies we're sending our money to don't share our values, our fundamental values. It's okay to have differences. It's okay to have disagreements. But when you can't even agree on free speech, what does that mean? The right for someone to not just say what they're thinking, but to even think something on their own. And so in the next portion of J.D. Vance's speech, he gave very specific examples of how Europe is threatening the very idea of free speech.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Now, you can fact check all of those examples that J.D. Vance said, and they're all 100% true. He didn't misrepresent them. He didn't cherry pick them. And as he said, those aren't just like extreme examples. This is happening in multiple countries all across Europe. So this is definitely a cultural shift that's going on, and that is what leadership is about. Leadership isn't just about military strength. It's also about convictions, and having the conviction, having the courage to hold your allies accountable and saying, hey, you need to do better, we need to do better, and the U.S. is quite literally leading the charge when it comes to free speech. You see it when it comes to social media actions and the Trump administration cracking down on that, and it's just left and right. It is night and day between the Biden regime and what we're seeing right now with Donald Trump. Well, all the speakers that followed J.D. Vance started ragging on him. They had these prepared speeches, but they were so alarmed, they were so upset by his speech that he dared call them out to their faces, that pretty much every speech after him was critical of what he said in that one segment. Here is just one of the speakers that followed him saying, oh, no, we allow free speech in Europe. And pretty much after he said we allow free speech in Europe, he just contradicts himself and says J.D. Vance's speech is unacceptable. Not I disagree, but it's unacceptable.
This is why I cannot just ignore what we heard before. I cannot not comment on the speech we heard by the U.S. Vice President. We fight for your right to be against us. That is the motto, one of the mottos of the Bundeswehr, and it stands for our democracy. This democracy that was just called into question by the US Vice President, and not just the German democracy, but Europe as a whole. He spoke of the annulment of democracy, and if I understood him correctly, he compares the condition of Europe with the condition that prevails in some authoritarian regimes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable.
And you can see there, this is not acceptable. He repeats that, this is not acceptable, this is unacceptable, and a huge applause line. They're all on the same page. If J.D. Vance was a resident in one of these European countries, he probably would have been arrested, because they now can arrest people for lying online. Who determines what the lie is? Who knows? Just, I guess, whoever's in power that day. But I don't know about you. I personally am very proud of J.D. Vance, and many things have made me feel really patriotic, really feel encouraged about this new administration. But that speech, whew, near the top of the list. But of course, the mainstream media here on the United States, they're taking the side of Europe. They're bashing J.D. Vance. Over on MSNBC, they had on Trump hater, who is suffering from like stage 5 Trump derangement syndrome, Rick Wilson, who, despite everything J.D. Vance said, despite all the examples he gave being true, dared to claim on MSNBC that Germany actually has better free speech than we have here in the States.
I communicated with somebody from the German CSU a little while ago, and I asked her what she thought about what had happened with Vance, and the degree to which they were shocked and appalled and offended that Vance came there daring to lecture Germany, one of the most free countries on earth when it comes to expression, where America is now rated 55th in the world on freedom of expression, it was appalling, and it was insulting.
First of all, Rick Wilson, I doubt, I haven't looked it up, I doubt we're that low. And if we are that low, that's because of your side, which tries to police everyone's speech when it comes to pronouns and gender and all these different woke ideologies. The right isn't policing speech, you guys are. If you want to live in a state of denial, fine by me, but I prefer to live in the state of Daniel. But as always, all of that is just my analysis and commentary. That is what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So J.D. Vance's speech, on the scale of Kamala Harris to Donald Trump's successor, where would you rate that? Personally, I hope Vance throws his hat in the ring in the 2028 primaries. I thought that speech was fire. We haven't really seen, I mean, we've seen him on the campaign trail, obviously, but really sticking to campaign talking points and letting Trump set the agenda. But I thought coming out like this and speaking with conviction, not from a preachy, condescending tone, but from a, hey, the U.S. is back, and we're reclaiming our mantle when it comes to being leaders of the free world. I think that is what it's all about, and I think he delivered on that 100%. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me... Oh, I almost forgot. In my last video, I asked what everyone heard when little X, Elon Musk's son, was talking. In case you missed it, the Democrats and the media are claiming that X told Trump to shut up and that he's not the president and he shouldn't be sitting in the chair. But it's indistinguishable. Like, you can't really hear what he's saying because the press is loud and then Elon Musk was talking. But overwhelmingly, what I would say 70% of y'all heard is something along the lines of, I have to pee, I have to go to the bathroom, and then several of you pointed out the body language of, yeah, he need to use the bathroom. And when I listened closely, I could really hear the P consonant. I thought that was very clear. I'll always level with you. I don't say things just to make people happy. Even though most people heard that, I think maybe one or two words are still a little off, but I think it's closer than what I had heard. I just don't think that we're right on the mark yet. And odds are we'll never know. And at the end of the day, like the fact that we have to be debating what a 4-year-old said, I mean, that really shows you how low the Democrats are stooping. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash the subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.